President Biden's national security team facing some backlash for their handling of Afghanistan. Congressman Andy Barr, Republican from Kentucky, wants the whole national security team to resign. Congressman, welcome to the show. Does that include Secretary of State Anthony Blinken? Because we haven't heard anything from him recently, in fact, at all.
Stuart, it absolutely includes Secretary of State Blinken. You know, when members of Congress and I were first briefed about President Biden's decision to unconditionally retreat from Afghanistan back in April, the entire national security team, including Secretary Blinken, Secretary Austin, and General Milley, briefed us. And we knew immediately that this was a dramatic shift away from the previous administration's policy of conditional and orderly withdrawal. And instead, and in place of that, Secretary Blinken described what we saw as an unconditional retreat based on a date certain of September 11th. I immediately reacted to Secretary Blinken and said, why September 11th? I can think of 364 preferable days than that, number one. Secondly, a date certain doesn't give you any flexibility in terms of reacting to the conditions on the ground. And I also asked about the wisdom of abandoning Bagram Air Base when we knew we were going to need it for the evacuation. And what we didn't know at the time was they were going to totally abandon Bagram before they had even extracted all of the Americans and our Afghan allies and our equipment. Now we know that there are billions of dollars of U.S. armor, helicopters, weapons that are and equipment that are now in the hands of the Taliban. The Taliban now has more Black Hawk helicopters than the nation of Australia. This is an embarrassment. It is a disaster. It is a catastrophe, and it has invited aggression from other countries. It's not just about compromising the counterterrorism mission and erasing 20 years of progress in the war on terror. It's also about now what our other adversaries are seeing, the weakness of this administration, the incompetence of this administration, and the lack of will of the Biden administration to deter our enemies.
With all this pressure and all this failure, I would expect some resignations voluntarily. I mean, I would expect somebody to take some part of the blame and responsibility by resigning. 30 seconds. Do you think an actual resignation will happen?
Well, we think it needs to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen, but certainly there needs to be accountability. These leaders, these so-called leaders in the national security team, they had the intelligence. I know they had the intelligence that their strategy was failing because the Biden administration itself was briefing members of Congress that this was not working. And we knew it, they knew it, and they did nothing to adjust their strategy. This is a total debacle. The American people are demanding accountability, and this has compromised American national security. We need a totally new team in place.
Congressman, we hear you, and we thank you very much for being an impassioned guest on our show this morning. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.